Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Investment Trends, where we discuss the latest news in the stock market and the economy. So, again, with me this week, I'm thrilled to be joined by John McKay. He's our chartered financial analyst, portfolio manager on the team, as we unpacked some of the most recent news in the stock market and the economy for this week. So, John, I know you mentioned some of the big news that we saw came from Apple. Um,
Yeah, on Monday, Tim Cook announced that he'd be stepping down as CEO effectively September 1st. Taking over for Cook will be John Ternus. He's the SVP of hardware engineering at Apple right now, and that should leave some opportunity. One of the big complaints that both investors and consumers have had during Cook's tenure is a lack of new product launch.
Oh, well, great. And we are, full disclosure, we're long Apple in our portfolios as holders of that stock. And to your point, I mean, tremendous job by Tim Cook, taking that company from a market cap of 350 billion to 4 trillion is truly a remarkable run. Obviously, not an easy position to take over for the great Steve Jobs. But Cook definitely took them to another level. And then, like you said, I think early on with the AI craze, Apple was a bit of a laggard. They felt like the AI was not being incorporated well within their phones. The most obvious complaint was around Siri and how inaccurate they felt that was. So yeah, this could be a great turning point for Apple to kind of take that next step forward.
Yeah, and with that, we'll also look at a planned integration with Google Gemini into the new phones. That should be kind of a send off for Cook and then a good jumping off point for Turnus.
Yep, yep, well, great. And all right, so speaking of send offs, leads to our next point with the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, Kevin Warsh was testifying before the Senate Banking Committee this week. Kind of sent some waves maybe with some of his comments, looking to get back to kind of the foundational principles of the Fed being independent, which maybe goes against some of the preferences of the current administration. Also looking to get Fed members giving less disclosures ahead of Fed meetings, keeping monetary policy more in-house. And then still kind of looming, Senator Tom Tillis has said that he will not allow this to go to the floor of the approval of Warsh until the DOJ drops charges against current Fed Chair Powell.
Yeah, yeah. So my 2 cents, and again, it seemed like the investigation into Powell was a little bit unwarranted. I know they were talking about the spending and the cost of renovations they were doing around the White House, but it kind of just seemed like a riff, almost like a personal riff that President Trump had against him. So I would assume in order to get his pick in there, another one of Trump's picks in there in that Fed Chair Reserve spot, I would assume that they'll try to drop that probe relatively quickly if it means getting him in. So what would be your 2 cents? A lot of people think that Warsh is being brought in to lower interest rates. He has obviously not come out and stated that, but I think they are still predicting some cuts later on this year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he actually starts his regime. He actually referred to it as a regime change, looking to be stricter, focused on inflation management. So
Yep.
that's kind of being read as being a bit more hawkish. And I would be a little more tentative to expect rate cuts right off the bat when he gets into the position.
Yep, yep. Well, great, and that leads us to our next topic today, and really an exciting time when companies start to have earnings announcements. To us, I think it's great to hear exactly from the leaders of some of the world's largest businesses. Obviously, some companies that we are investors in from an individual stock perspective. And because a lot of what you hear on a day-to-day basis is news headlines or maybe fear-driven or clickbait. But when these earnings reports come out, it's great to hear directly from these companies, and yeah, sounds like they've been off to a pretty strong start for the first quarter.
Yeah, earnings reports don't tell the whole story, but they're a great data point. So we look at this period each quarter as a great time to kind of reassess where we're at in the market. Currently, we've got about 10% of the S&P 500 having reported, 88% have beaten on earnings per share, and 84% have beat revenue estimates, which that's fantastic. We haven't seen crazy movements across the board, and what we're seeing, this is on pace to be the sixth consecutive quarter with earnings growth. With that, kind of doesn't move the needle as much as it did at the beginning of that period. We're now seeing forward guidance as really the driver of growth in the market.
Right. Yeah, and it kicked off last week. One of the ones in particular that I pay attention to is Jamie Dimon, what he has to say at J.P. Morgan. He's definitely seems to be kind of the voice of finance, so to speak. And full disclosure again, we're investors in that and hold the position. But they had yet another strong quarter. A revenue beat, earnings per share beat as well. So that kicked things off in what seemed to be the right direction. It also seemed to spark a pretty quick recovery in the market from it being negative on the year, and now we've had a great April and a quick recovery from everything we've seen there. Another interesting one that came out yesterday was Elon Musk and Tesla. Paying attention to what he has to say. Obviously, it seems like he talks less and less about cars and more about the future.
Yeah, I think Elon's vision is really Tesla is going to be more of a robotics, artificial intelligence company moving forward. They're starting to scale down and completely phase out a few of the models of the Tesla cars over the next quarter and a half, and really diving full in on the Optimus robot project. With that, they're also seeing great leaps forward on robotaxi. They've gone full driverless in Dallas and Houston, not quite at the pace that Elon had led people to believe it would be at. I think he's targeting 26 states by the end of the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would follow that. Tesla doesn't really move with its earnings. Right. It's got a very passionate investor base, and it's really looking at Elon's long-term view.
Yes. Right. Yeah. So definitely something that we'll be keeping an eye on as we shift in more and more companies start to report earnings. Keep you updated on that. But that's all we've got for this week. We appreciate everyone tuning in. If you're following any certain stocks, any sectors in the market you'd like for us to cover, feel free to leave a comment below.